ADA's actually done a pretty good job in the middle part of this cycle, and some people might disagree, but the problem is that just the price chart itself paints an incorrect picture, because when we look at ADA compared to some of the other top alts in the space for the last year, it has actually been outperforming, which is a great sign. And in fact, this is exactly what we saw last market cycle before ADA had a blowout second half. And I want to talk about all that and more in this video, and as well as ADA BTC. So if you guys are new or haven't already, show your support for the channel down below. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. It's free to do. It'll keep you updated anytime there's new content live here on the channel. So we're starting to see part of the early day money, and we're just kind of chopping. Again, I expect today to be kind of a lower volume day unless we get some surprises in the market. If there's surprises, I hope they're good ones. I'm tired of bad surprises that just cause us to have these kind of rough weekends, but we'll see how things progress. But what I will say is, yes, 2025 has not been good. It has not been fun. I'm ready for prices to run. I'm sure everybody else is here as well. And what we've seen over the last year is a pretty distinct shift in terms of ADA. I think we can all agree that earlier on this market cycle, ADA did well, but it was kind of just not on par with a lot of other alts at the time. If you guys remember, from ADA's bear market lows of about 22 cents to the early cycle highs of about 81 cents, that was very small compared to many other alts in the space. It was only about a 4x, wasn't even completely a 4x, right? And then we kind of witnessed this transition in the summer. We saw a long period of consolidation. We saw a lot of developments and launches take place in terms of the Cardano ecosystem, lots of partnerships developing. And now, basically, this last year has been a very distinct shift. Obviously, we've had major developments again still taking place. We've had, the Hydra unveiling. We've had governance come out. We have, integrations in several governments throughout the world. We have enterprise interest in Cardano. I mean, there's a lot of things that have kind of taken us to this new heights. Potential, obviously, crypto strategic reserve assets, still questions about that. But that has caused us to actually, one, outperform Solana over the last year. Two, outperform Ethereum over the last year. So I actually stumbled across an article that was talking about exactly this. And what I found very interesting about this is earlier on in this cycle, people dogged ADA for not performing well. But yet some of the assets they actually compared it against, it's been doing better than. And this is a pretty distinct shift, because this is exactly what we saw in ADA versus some other alts last market cycle. And I think it's a pretty important point to note that the conviction for Cardano is remaining high. And this is why when we start to have some of these pumps, ADA tends to decorrelate and do a little bit better than the rest of the market. Now, I'm not saying that's always the case. I'm not saying that happens every single day. But I think a very obvious part of that was when we look back at the early part of March, when we had the crypto strategic reserve asset announcement. ADA was the best performer of those five. I know I've mentioned that a couple times recently, but I think it's definitely worth noting nonetheless. We have even had times in this market cycle where ADA has been, for the cycle in its entirety, performed very close to BTC. If we look at the highs in December here of 2024, geez, I can't remember what year it is, of 2024, ADA had run about 500% from the bottom. At that time, BTC had run 583% from the bottom. Very darn close. So we're getting into that point now where on this next surge, it may in fact be the moment, where ADA is outperforming BTC for this entire cycle. I'm not saying that's the case yet, but a lot of these things have kind of aligned perfectly. And in fact, when we're taking a look at the ADA BTC chart, I want to point to the fact that we've now had a very more distinct descending wedge here for ADA. And I want to remind everybody, we were building one of these the last time ADA went on a major run, apart from obviously the breakout in March. But when we look back at November, we kind of had an early exit from this big descending wedge that we were building there as well. And that caused ADA to run to some pretty exciting highs in terms of the ADA BTC chart. So that is something that we need to watch for moving forward. We've obviously talked about a lot of different things, and we're eventually going to get to a point where alts are in fact outpacing BTC despite the institutional interest, despite the government interest. And it really all comes down to, again, retail. Retail is going to be the big driver of late market cycle price in terms of ADA and most other alts in the space. They unfortunately have just not had, quote unquote, a fair chance of getting into altcoins because there's been so much suppression and manipulation and negative news. And it's just caused, again, all this negative sentiment to just enter assets throughout the space. So what you need to understand is that the underperformance for ADA is kind of gone. All right. It's setting itself up well for this market cycle. I'm not saying we're not going to have bad days. I'm not saying we can't even go lower in terms of price. Again, it all comes down to sentiment. But you have to think long term, right? That is the best way to approach these market cycles, is long term, especially as we're going through some major shifts. Did want to point out here, actually down around the bottom of this descending wedge that we're at currently is actually some of those cycle lows that we saw in terms of ADA BTC. So maybe something to watch out for there. Maybe we do see ADA kind of hold while BTC goes on a little bit more of a run and we get down to that basically, 480, 475 level in terms of sats. So we'll just have to watch and wait and see what happens. But you can't argue against what Cardano has been doing. It's been doing some great stuff, big steps forward. You can't argue against what ADA's been doing because, guys, it's in the charts versus the market. So appreciate you guys. Have a great day. Show your love below. Let me know your thoughts. Catch you guys in the next one. Take care.